RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at GStanley@rmsotheby's.com. All right, well, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I'm very excited about my guest today because I've been using his valuation tools for like 4 years now. So I'm pleased to welcome Dave Kinney. Dave, how you doing today?
Thank you very much, Greg. Is the check in the mail for using my valuation tools for the longest time?
I think you owe me a check.
Oh,
right?
Is that the way it works? How about if we just balance them out? I'll write you an imaginary check and you write me an imaginary check.
Let's buy each other beers and call it a day.
Actually, you know what? We could each write a check for $1 million, and that way the government will get a big part of it, and we'll send up with the exact same thing. If you want to do that, I don't think
Sure. Why not? Yeah. So I don't know if you know this or not, but I've been using the Haggerty valuation tools for literally like 4 years now, and I've done everything from Fox body market trends, Mustang Fox bodies, to Porsche market trends, to Ferraris, to supercars, everything, because it's such a great tool and a really cool thing. So if you would, I want an overview of what you think the market's doing right now. But first, would you tell us a little bit about how that whole thing got started and what you do today?
Yeah, the origin story is pretty funny. I was quite literally, I'm an appraiser. So I was quite literally looking one day to try and value an ISO Grifo and a buddy of mine's car, and he had hired me to get a value on it. And I went to 3 different price guides, and they all had them for sub $100,000. And this was when the Grifo was probably a $110,000 car or something like that. And I was so frustrated, I basically said, I'd buy a truckload of ISO Grifos at these prices. And I called a friend of mine and I said, the same thing. I said, it's too bad because they're not keeping up with current prices whatsoever, any of these guys. And that led to maybe I should start my own price guide. And kind of a ridiculous idea, but after a while it kind of resonated. And so I had one person in mind, Brian Raybald, who I worked with at Sports Car Market a million years ago, and I said, if I can get Brian to be my editor, I will start this thing. So sure enough, asked Brian, and he said he would help me take it on, and we thought it would be basically a weekend project. And of course, it became a lot more than that. And we started something called Cars That Matter. We first published in 2006, although we started the whole venture in 2005. And we got ready to take our first published product to Monterey. So it was August of 2026 when we first started. And that's basically the origin story. And it kind of grew from there. And then in 2011, I talked to the folks at Haggerty, and it became the Haggerty Price Guide after that. And I've been the publisher since it started. I was the founder, and I'm still the publisher. And I like to say that, we do what we want. We're very independent, and we try and be a fair player to everybody. We miss some things, and, we always have people who are angry, but we always take advice from people. If somebody wants to get in touch and just say, yeah, I think you're wrong on blank, we'll look into it. A lot of the times, like everything else, there's cars that every once in a while get ignored, and we miss something, but most of the time we get the big ones and we get them right, and we keep on changing. So very proud of the product, very proud of what we do, and very proud of where we've come, because it's one of the recognized sources, if not the number one recognized source for valuation for most people.
Yeah, if you would, could you walk us through a little bit of the process, how you come up with the numbers and put them in the calculator and figure it all out? And a couple of years ago, maybe we should resurrect it. I actually did a Super Bowl using the valuation tools. So I had some Haggerty experts at the time, including Brad Phillips, as I know you know. And
sure.
Yeah, we had a $1 million budget, and we could pick 11 cars, and we had bench cars. And so you had $1 million budget, and then we would do for the quarterly updates, we would get back together and see who had picked the right ones as far as increasing the most.
Is that why Brad kept on sending me $20 bills kind of anonymously?
Maybe that was it.
That's
Well,
it.
for the record, I won, but yeah, he
Okay,
came in
good.
second.
Well, behind you can see the aquarium there. We actually have a giant fish bowl, and we put a whole bunch of numbers in, and we shake it up, and that's how. No, just kidding. We actually have access to a lot of information on private sales because Haggerty has that information, so we can look into that. I do. I get it anonymously, so I don't know if Bob Smith bought this car or
Sure.
Phil Jones bought this car. I don't care, not my job, but we know when a big car moves from that standpoint. Obviously, we watch the auctions. RM's one of our benchmarks, so we work behind the scenes getting that. I like to go and take a look at cars. We have other people who go and take a look at cars, so we condition them. If it's a 1, if it's a 2, if it's a 3. Rarely at a big auction you rarely see 4s, but every once in a while, such as the Rudy Klein auction, you see nothing but 4s.
Right.
Not that was a bad thing, because that was actually that was Haggerty's auction of the year. I don't know if you saw that. I wrote that.
Oh no, I haven't seen that yet.
I wrote that for the Haggerty Insider. I called the Rudy Klein auction the auction of the year. I'm a sucker for junkyard auctions. I've got to say, I just love the stuff where stuff goes for crazy money. But anyhow, we do that. We also so we have private clients. I also am in the industry and have been for way longer than I care to admit. So I have a whole bunch of dealer friends that I talk to. Now, having been an ex collector car dealer myself, I know that the BS meter has to be alive all times. I'm talking to everyone, but especially with my dealer friends. When they say, "Oh man, the Daytona is going to just go up crazy in value," and then you look at their inventory and they have 3 Daytonas in stock, you kind of go, yeah, okay, maybe there's a little bit of bias here. But we put everything into the conambulator, as you said, or something similar.
A gonculator.
Pardon me?
A gonculator.
The gonculator, exactly. And we come up with valuations in 4 different price ranges. Now, what we've seen in the last few years, no surprise to anybody, that our number 4 condition has mostly gone down. Our number 1 condition continues to increase. I'm going to just say, with bunny ears here, on an overall basis, because people will spend the money for a great version of an X, no matter what it is, whether it's a Gremlin X or whether it's a Ferrari, XXX. People want the best of the best, and this is that market right now. And there's no surprise to anybody who's been watching it that people don't want to restore cars like they did even 10 and 15 and certainly 20 and 30 years ago. It was, buy a car and restore it and make it yours. I'm from the era where people bought a Duesenberg SJ and they would take it home and they'd change the color because they didn't want it to look like Bob's car. They wanted it to be their car. And, those days are gone. People want to restore to hopefully original colors or original style colors. In the 70s, everything was brown with brown, was light brown with dark brown. And you can still see every once in a while those 70s restorations coming up. I have a friend who's a dealer who buys those cars that are dark brown and tan, and he paints the dark brown part black, and all of a sudden it's acceptable. So, that's one of his little secret tips. But we've seen an incredible growth in the market over the 30 some odd years that I've been involved in it. And I've been an appraiser for 30 years, but I was involved in it when I was 15 and 16 years old because I worked for a guy who was now, one of the legendary car dealers from the past. But he's still active and we still talk all the time, and I still get information from him. So we get it from people who've been in the business for, seems like 15 minutes, and people who've been in the business seems like 50 years. So I got a pretty good mix of people that I talk to and that kind of give me information about what they're looking at, what they think's the up and comer, what's lost its legs for a while, all that sort of stuff. So that's
and I know I asked you, I noticed, I forgot what it was, like Pagani's aren't in there, but that's such, there's certain cars that it doesn't make sense necessarily to have them in there yet just because of the volume of transactions. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And also we have to collect a lot of data, and of course, the more data points, the better. But we do have cars that they made 9 of, and a couple of them in there that are kind of trip us up. That we do have a Rolls Royce in there that they made exactly 1 of in left-hand drive. So we priced that one car in left-hand drive, and the owner probably doesn't even know it. We're pricing his car specifically, but
Right.
that's the only case where we do that. So, it's a special coach-built car. Long story short, though, yeah, we're adding more and more, and the stuff that we keep adding is probably all 2010 up. So the market has changed so much that when in 2005, everybody would still say it takes 25 years for it to be a collector car. Now the collector car thing seems like 25 days because when the manufacturers are all now, let me just back up. In the 1970s, we all know manufacturers made some collector edition cars. There was the Cadillac Bicentennial 76 and all the 76 Eldorados. Corvette made a number of special cars. Now, almost all the manufacturers, not all, well, all the high-end manufacturers are involved in it. So they'll do these bespoke editions that, that do make a difference even when they're kind of new cars. Aston Martin has gone crazy with it. They make almost nothing but bespoke editions, it seems. Rolls-Royce does it. Bentley does it. Ferrari does it. Maserati does it to a lesser extent. So almost everyone is involved. And then there's one car that I skipped over, but Porsche has made an entire marketplace out of, getting $10,000 more for the paint to sample wheel centers, that sort of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm exaggerating, but not much.
Yeah, it seems to be really tough to. I mean, it's just going to continue to grow. I know you've added a bunch of motorcycles not too long ago, and I see a bunch of stuff probably coming soon because I know there's like Toyota Tacomas in there, but there's not the Forerunners. Or I drive an FJ every day, and I know that's going to be in there one day. It's just a matter
Sure.
of time. So that's a lot. So I do have a question specifically about the Rudy Klein collection.
Sure.
So when you see a massive sale like that, let's pull out the crazy Mercedes alloy Gullwing that sold for approximately $9 million all in, a little bit over. That's like a number 4 car. So
Easily.
you know what? Let's say number 1 car was making it up $7 million. Now you got a number 4 car selling at $9 million. Do you pull out buyer's fees? Do you take away the highest and the lowest and do the median? Like, how does that play into it?
Actually, that's a great question, and thanks. We don't take out buyer's fees because at an auction you have to pay the buyer's fee. Now,
Yep.
The seller's fee, that's sometimes negotiable. The more cars you have, the more that's going to be negotiable. But the buyer's fee is almost always what it is. It's the 12% or the mixture or whatever. So that's cool. And so we're relatively sure that person paid that $9,335,000 or whatever. I think that's probably close to the number. Barn finds have been something that have been an anomaly in our marketplace now for a long, long time. Too long to call them an anomaly. They're part of the marketplace. So we acknowledge them, but barn finds do best in an auction situation when there's a lot of excitement. So if you've got a barn find, and specific cars do better as well. So when you have a 300 SL, they only built a very limited number of them. What is it, like 1,400 Gullwings, something along those lines? I know I'm wrong, but let's just say that's right. So there's only 1,400 to choose from. Take out the 200 that have been destroyed or wrecked or whatever. You're down to 1,200. So when a barn find comes up, it makes news. But a Ford Torino, a 71 Ford Torino, when it comes up, when it's a barn find, is not going to exceed the number 1 value most likely. So you have to kind of put a filter on it because there's still a lot of Torinos out there, and most people would prefer to have a number 1 car to a barn find car. So that barn find Torino is probably not going to sell for a number 1 price. So it makes our market more fun to deal with. We don't look at Rudy's sale and say it didn't happen, because it did happen. For the longest time, before there was Bring a Trailer, before there was dominance in the marketplace by a number of different players, there was only the Barrett-Jackson auction, and so you would always get these. I would call them Barrett-Jackson pricing. So a '69 Camaro that sells for $385,000 that normally would have sold for $185,000. It's all part of the marketplace, so we all have to acknowledge that. I will tell you, because I finished pricing the 300 SL Gullwing alloy cars yesterday. We raised the price of our number one and our number two based on the Rudy sale, even though that car was not a number one or a number two. We were a little bit low. I was actually, if you read my story, which you should have done.
I need to.
If you read my story, you'll see that I was online with a whole bunch of texts going while that auction. I wasn't at the auction, but it was appointment watching for that sale. I had the clock set that Saturday afternoon for whenever the sale was going to go off. So I watched the whole thing, and my phone started lighting up. And so we started doing the over-under. And I had that car at $6 million. So I'm happy to say that I missed it by a third, maybe a little better than a third, but I'm happy to see it. It's like I said, it's all part of the marketplace. So I understand that car is now at the Mercedes-Benz Center in Long Beach, and it's getting something of a, let's call it a, I think they're trying to get it running and a better car and kind of leave it in the shape it's in. So more power to them. They're going to have fun. They're going to have fun with it as Rudy's car. So
that's cool, because
that's rumors, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's the only black alloy ones. I assumed it would immediately go back to being black. I did run into one of the Rudy Klein cars. That's a mouthful. Last week or the week before in a restoration shop, and it's one that you kind of already mentioned somewhat. It's the prototype ESO convertible.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's going back to its original configuration. I know the nose wasn't quite right, some different things. So that'll be cool when we see that one show up one day. That I know you're an ESO fan, so that would be very cool.
Well, I saw on social that the guy who bought it also owns a very early one, or maybe even the first ESO. Yeah, okay. So his collection is now pretty much complete. Well, I'll tell you how smart I am. Okay, Greg. So let's just go back a little bit. I once bought an ESO Grifo. Now, keep in mind that the dealership that I worked for when I was in high school, I had two of them that I drove, and I drove both of them to high school. One was a black car with a silver roof, so the Targa section was silver, and the other was a white car with a tan interior. I would have to explain it as a Corvette with an Italian suit, which I still kind of like.
I like that.
It kind of is. It's a bespoke Italian suit on a Corvette. But it's a lot more than that. I know that. But so anyhow, I'm kind of an ESO guy from back then because I didn't have to own it. I just drove it. In about 1978, I bought a wrecked ESO out of Miami. Now, of course, anybody who has been to Miami and bought cars knows that it's an entirely different experience in Miami than it is in anywhere else in the entire world. In other words, when you're in Miami and you're buying a wrecked ESO, you bring cash. So I paid somewhere around $3,300 for the car. $3,300. Okay. Well, I had a roommate at the time. This is before I was married, and we had a garage at our house, and he took it. He's a handy guy, still a great friend. Kind of that, never ran out of rabbits guy. He always had one more to pull out of his hat. And he said, you know what? I'm going to take this car. I'm going to go to the high school extension body shop for the summer, and I'll use this car. And he put it together in the body shop. In the meantime, I called a friend of mine who lived in Italy, who is a car guy, famous guy, actually, who had a Ferrari dealership later on. But anyhow, I called him and had him get the rear bumper, the tail lights, and a couple other pieces of trim that were smashed on this car. The rear bumper is stainless. It's not chrome, polished stainless. But anyhow, for $900, I bought the parts out of Italy, delivered.
Wow.
And we put the car back together, and being the ballers we were, we sold it for $10,000.
Wow,
can you imagine? Yeah. So I think we probably split about, $3,000 in profit, something like that. And, my friend Walt did all the work. I made, more money than he did, for the hours done. But I also got it in a one of the writers from Auto Week called me and said, I'd like to do a driving impression thing on this car. And I said, sure. So there's also an Auto Week article about that car
okay.
back in the day. But that's my one and only ESO ownership experience. But I've owned a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, really crazy stuff.
I know you're a Avante fan, which that goes without saying. That's some crazy stuff.
That's some crazy stuff. But I've owned 250 GTE. I've owned a couple of 330 Ferraris. I currently own a 612 Scaglietti. But you're talking to the only person you're going to talk to today who bought a Brubaker box. Okay, so
really,
yeah, you're going to have to look it up. Most people don't have any idea what it is. It was the actual first minivan, and it was so new that it was so cool. Before minivans weren't cool. So I'll
see if I can find a picture.
Oh, yeah. You'll find one. You'll probably find it of my car. It's brown with gold metal flake and brown top.
And I'll do a voiceover of your article at the end of this so that we can have the full Rudy Klein, overview that you've provided for Hagerty. That'll be fun. I'll add that as well. I don't want to keep going back to the evaluation process, but I'm curious, Do you factor in, let me preface this by, I love to bring a trailer model because, they don't handle money. They don't do title transfers. I call it like a dating service. They introduce you to the person who has agreed and they do have financial commitment in which to buy it. So it's like the dating game. Do you include those in the valuation process?
Yeah, we do. But we used, I like to say John decided with everything because we don't know how many of those sales actually completed. It's probably a pretty high number. I would say it's probably well above 80%. But we all know that cars get relisted or cars go to someplace else and people don't complete the sale. So, a lot of the times we will find out because another transaction comes out of it and we're able to talk to the person. There are occasionally times when they show up somewhere else that we're able to find them. But with every auction and with every sale, you have to have a little bit of, I think I got my bullshit meter up a little higher right now because of that. And there are phony sales at auctions. That's been happening since, I would say, the first auction company started in like 1750. I'm thinking that it started in February of 1750, that somebody's brother-in-law bid on, the rock they were selling or whatever it was. So, I mean, there's always that, and you always have to keep that in mind. But you can see it confirmed when you're involved in the sale in some way, or as an appraiser, I don't buy and sell cars, but I do see them transacted. A lot of the times I'll go to an estate and I can find out what the person paid for the car, in 1996 or in 2006 or in 2016, whatever it was, sometimes 76. And so a lot of the time, most of the time, I'd say it would track with what we see. No price guide can ever be perfect, and that's why we call it a guide and not a gospel.
Sure.
So, and you always should take it to, take in mind, you should look at 3 price guides. You shouldn't just look at one if you're looking at cars. You should do your own research and see what happens. There are always times when cars sell for way more than they should, and there are always times when people sell cars for way less. When people go to an auction and they haven't been before, they say, well, there's this red Mustang that I want to buy. And I always tell them, do you like Camaros? And they say, well, yeah. I said, well, there's 6 Camaros there and there's 9 Mustangs in your, Fox body grouping or something like that. I would suggest you look at every single one of them, because if you want to come home with a trophy, if you're just going for one car, there's a really good chance you're not going to buy it because somebody else is going to want it more, or it doesn't meet the reserve, or, whatever happens. So I think the smart people at auctions are the ones who were, and of course, I'm going to give you my dealer rant here in a second, which is not what most people do as a dealer rant. But anyhow, there's always a price support level for most cars in a good economy. I've never seen an economy where there wasn't a price support level. Nobody wants it. That's what's known as a liquidation sale or a forced liquidation sale. The reasons why people who hate dealers should actually turn around a little bit and say, I kind of like dealers more, is if that Mustang that's going for should be selling for 36,000, if it's up there and it sells for $20,000 to a dealer, you should thank your lucky stars that dealer was there, because that means it didn't sell for 12,000 for somebody who really didn't even want the car but thought they could make a few good bucks. So the dealer level comes in, and that's your support level, that's your wholesale level on any auction. Doesn't matter if it's the highest highfalutin sale or a farm sale in the middle of Iowa. You want that price support level there.
It's funny you say that, and I don't want to go on my own rant, but I had one of our local,
come on, let's rant.
One of our kind of old stodgy guys in one of the groups I hang out with here locally. He's like, the auction house has killed it for the average hobbyist. The car, and I'm like, wait a second. You're just telling me you can't steal cars from other people, is what you're telling me. Because I gave him the example, like the first car I ever consigned for RM Sotheby's was a 58 Cadillac Baritz convertible for a widow. Mm-hmm. And, the car hobbyists were lowballing her and kicking the tires and trying to steal the car. And she was just getting sick and tired of it, and so I met her through a friend, flyer at a car thing. And anyways, it was a rough car. It wasn't running, hadn't run in 12 years. The gas tank, there was some rot on it, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, we took it to Auburn, and it almost doubled the low estimate because people were really excited about it. She was so excited that she was jumping up and down. They filmed her for the local news. And, but I don't know. Yes, we want to get a good deal, but no, we don't necessarily, you don't want to steal it from the widow, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to get down to it here, I liked auctions better before there was an online component, because if no one was in the room and you were the only one there, and, it's the 73rd, or more like the 273rd car going through for the day, and if you're there, you could catch a couple steals at the end. You can still catch steals. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I always say that if you go to an auction, if there's more than 100 cars, there will be a great buy there. Unfortunately, it's going to be that 2003 steam buggy that you know nothing about, or whatever, or you have absolutely no interest in. It's not going to be the car that you went there for. But the chances are. That's one of the reasons why I love the auction process. I always, I'm that guy. I haven't done it in years because I've been so busy, but, I'd be driving out in the country and I'd see there's a farm sale, and I'm going and I'm watching them go through pots and pans, and I'm just smiling because I love sales. I mean, I love the auctions. I love the process. I love watching a great auctioneer, how he or she controls the room, and when they're in control, and keeps everybody in their seats by corny humor or promises of something coming up in the future or whatever, because it's great theater, it's great fun, and some of the wonderful auctioneers that we've all seen in the past, and presently, they're insulting their audience in the nicest possible way. I mean, or they're they're in on the inside joke or something like that when a car sells for too much or something like that, and it's all, well, great, congratulations with that, and what the rest of it is, it's like, good luck with that or whatever. But it's fun, it's theater, and instead of watching reality TV, I go to the auctions. How's that? Because sure. There's a lot of that there. The other thing I'd say is that. To anybody who doesn't like the auction process, Greg, as an appraiser, I've been in that situation where Fred passes away. His wife's got, in a very memorable one for me, a 66 Shelby GT350H, and Fred's new best friend, now that he's dead, Bob, wants to buy the car for $48,000 and does Bob and I talked about it. Fred and I talked about it. He
told me he'd sell it for that price.
He told me he'd sell it for that price. And I've had to actually, no exaggeration, sit with the widow, call the attorney. And I remember, because this was before we had cell phones. So we called using, the speakerphone that she had in her house. There were wireless phones then, but we didn't have, and we called the attorney. And so I asked a number of leading questions. I said, Widow Smith thinks that she's obligated to sell this car to this other guy. Would you please? And he said, no, that's why Mr. Kinney is there, because we're getting a value on the car. And the car at the time was worth about $110,000. And eventually that's what the car sold for. Actually, I think I hit it for 110, and I think she sold it for 105 or something like that. But, that opens it up for people who otherwise might have made a mistake and sold their car for half price. And I like that fact. So, they can take it to a local sale if as long as it's well advertised. But I like the bigger sales. I like at least regional auctions and, of course, national auctions. Not every car gets into them, but
it's real hard to get a car in the arm right now.
Oh yeah, I know. And I also explain, and I love this because maybe you've done this before too. I call it real estate. Every auction slot is like real estate. And when you're in Monterey, you might as well call it beach real estate in California, because getting a car in, the auction company wants that car to sell because they're going to make more money. They want a realistic seller, and they'll bring the buyers. But the good news is that that's how the process works. But every time they've given that slot number 25 to somebody or slot number 28 to somebody, that's one less car that they can sell, because you can't keep people there for 12 or 14 or 16 hours and expect the sale to go well.
Yeah, that's the issue I'm having right now. I think Moda, we can't even consider a car unless it's over $400,000 because there's limited spots.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you all day here, but I do want to know, can you give us your perspective on the market, where you think it will go in 2025?
I'm kind of excited about 2025. Of course, it's a new year. Last year was an election year. And of course, everybody seems to sit on their wallet during an election year. And it's the same thing. My guy's not going to win. My guy's going to win, whatever. They want to be conservative. I think that the first sale is going to be Kissimmee with Mecum. I think they're going to do very well, and I think Barrett Jackson will do well. Of course, we've got RM coming up in Arizona as well, and Bonhams, and I think everybody's going to be pretty happy here. And this will set the tone for the year, although, it used to be these were the benchmark sales. They're not as much of the benchmark sales anymore. But the front of the year is front loaded with more sales, if you think about it. More sales happen between January and July than between, end of July, August, and the end of the year. That's kind of when things slow down a little bit. I think 2025 is going to be a pretty good year for collector cars. I think we've had our best year for a while. I'm not so happy about my prospects at 26 and 27, mostly from the fact that we are now like 7 years overdue for a recession. But I think that there's a lot of excitement in the market for 2025.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Just from what I've been seeing, the activity, I've got only a couple cars in our Arizona sale, but the interest level inquiries are pretty strong right out of the gate. So
good. I want every auction company to do well, because I want everybody to have more auctions, so I can have more fun going to auctions. Usually not buying cars, but being involved in the process, and at least from the spectator standpoint.
Well, I appreciate your time today. What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about you and your appraisal process?
My business is U.S. Appraisal. We're located in Great Falls, Virginia. You can reach me through appraiser at usappraisal.com. That's USAPPRAISAL.com. I have some social media presence, mostly because I'm old. I'm on Facebook, but I'm also on Threads and a few others. You can find me there as well.
So what's funny is I just need to go back and how we met a couple weeks ago in Great Falls is we have a mutual friend, Tim McNair, who's been on the podcast a couple times. We all hung out in Monterey. And I said, hey, Tim, I'm in Alexandria or wherever I was. No, Great Falls. He's like, well, you got to call Dave. So I called you up, and I was at a Starbucks, and you're like, well, look straight up to the right. If you see the 7-Eleven, that's my office. Like, I was literally like,
oh, wait a minute. My office is above the 7-Eleven in another building. Let's get that clear.
Yes, you are.
I'm not next to the Slurpee machine. But.
No. But it was hilarious that I called you, and I was like practically looking at your office at that time. So random.
Yeah.
So
well, it's a small world, but you wouldn't want to paint it, right?
That's right. Well, Dave, thanks so much. Hopefully, I'll see you at our next auction.
Well, I'll be in Arizona, so we'll see you there.
Okay, as promised, here's Dave's article titled "Junkyard Gems Make Up Our Sale of the Year for the Rudy Klein Collection." Per Dave, I see a lot of auctions. I watch them in person, on the big screen in my house, and the smaller screens on my desk, laptop, or phone. My name is Dave Kinney, and yes, I admit I'm an auction addict, and I'm not ashamed of that. My dirty little secret is that I have always liked auctions. Farm sales, closeout electronic liquidations, home clearouts, sheriff sales, unpaid tax sales, you name it. Sometimes they are happy sales, other times they can be sad. As a car guy, though, I like car auctions, and collector car auctions most of all. I have seen hundreds in person, and with the proliferation of sales shown on television and the internet, combined with the advent of online bidding, my obsession with watching auctions can border on ridiculousness. The good news is that as the publisher of the Haggerty Price Guide, as well as my role as an appraiser, this little fixation on auctions helps me understand the markets. It's also why I've been asked to pick a sale of the year among all the countless auction sales of the last 12 months. It's a tough choice because a lot has happened in the collector car auction scene in 2024. Gooding and Company announced its new affiliation with Christie's. Worldwide Auctioneers continues to pretty much own the space in Auburn, Indiana, at the Auburn Court and Duesenberg Festival during Labor Day weekend. Longtime auction powerhouse Mecum and Barrett-Jackson had great years, and we are poised to have a great January. Broad Arrow Auctions continues its brisk but rational growth both online and in person, and their marquee Monterey sale was my second favorite of the season. But it's Arm Sotheby's The Junkyard, the Rudy Klein collection sale, that gets my sale of the year nod. This is the sale that ticked all the boxes for me. It was a wonderland of stuff, and prices were all over the place. It had parts and pieces that sold for just a few dollars, and some of the cars and parts sold for truly mystifying amounts. There hadn't been an old car auction quite like this before, and it's doubtful we'll see one quite like it again. If you don't know the details, here is a brief refresh. Rudy Klein was a German who came to the U.S. already equipped with an eye for great cars. Not a moneyed collector, Rudy bought, sold, but apparently mostly kept a lot of the great cars that were down on their luck. Damaged in an accident, forlorn, abandoned mid-restoration, missing major pieces, it really didn't matter. The insider of his Porsche, the missing S is correct, foreign auto yard was seen by very few people and bordered on mythical by the last 10 years of Rudy's life. Unlike many myths, it actually did exist, and it held even more than was promised. Let's face it, many of us love a junkyard. Junkyards are the field of dreams for car people. They offer not only a glimpse of the past, but hopes of the future. This, however, was not your average junkyard. Highlights included 3 Lamborghini Miuras in various states of disrepair, tons of Porsche parts, plus a few notable Porsche cars in various states of decrepitude. There was an entire literal wall of Porsche 356s and 911s, 2 crushed Ferrari 330 GTCs, bits and pieces of a 275 GTS, various Mercedes cars and parts, several special German pre-war cars, plus much, much more. I watched the sale online with a group of remote friends, and the texts were flying with guesses and excitement and comments, many of them totally unprintable. For many of us car guys, even ones who watch auctions all the time, this was easily the equivalent of a major playoff game or some college rivalry with perhaps a touch of the Super Bowl, minus the halftime, thrown in. The major surprise for me was Lot 290, the alloy Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. Just one of 29 early-bodied alloy Gullwings, it was in shabby condition and missing important bits. I was expecting a sub-$6 million final result. The final sales price with fees was $9,350,000, or well over a third more than this armchair expert expected. In the end, the sale brought a total of almost $30 million, just about doubling the auction house's own $17 million low estimate. Great auctions should be fun, fast-moving, and full of surprises. They should provide entertainment to those in the know, as well as to the casual observer. To be an unforgettable event, they should have spice, intrigue, and an element of voyeurism. Rudy, you are gone, and your treasures have been dispersed, but you will not soon be forgotten. This was a sale not just for the record books, but one for the memory banks. All right, Dave. That was a very nice article. Thanks for sharing it. And as always, I will talk to all of you next Thursday.